Hey, what's going on everyone? Today I will be reviewing the Shimano Tranx 400 and 401. I have the 401 here, which is basically just the left-handed version. 400 is right-handed, but I have put it to the test over the past 6 months that I've had it, using it a ton for big striper and bull redfish, and just wanted to give you my thoughts on it so far. It is an expensive reel, so it's an investment that you don't want to go into without paying attention and knowing exactly what you're getting. So if you're interested in this reel, it is absolutely amazing for big fish, throwing big swim baits, things like that. Tarpon, big snook, bass, throwing big swim baits, muskie. Covers a lot of species that you can target with this reel, throwing big baits specifically. And let's get into the breakdown. So I pair this reel up with a St. Croix Avid Inshore heavy action rod. It goes really well with this reel. It is a perfect match for it, I think. I haven't had any issues with that pair up, and there's a multitude of other ways that you can pair this reel up with it. But I typically have tied on anywhere from a 1/2 ounce to a 3 ounce bait, typically a paddle tail and a jig head. And so far, it has been really great for me. So my overall thoughts have been, I love it. It gets in fish really quickly compared to my other setups, like a 5000 series reel with a medium heavy action rod. This setup gets them in a lot quicker. This reel has 18 pounds of drag, and I can also thumb it if I really want to get them in as fast as possible. So especially with that power knob that it has there, it really gives you a lot of leverage to crank on those fish, which makes it really nice. The one downside that I've noticed with a bigger reel like this is my first reel in this caliber size of a 300 or 400, but maybe I'm not as used to that size or what, but setting the brakes like normally using the knobs here, usually I get the tension set to, once I click the button, it's able to have that bait dropping down and slowly hitting the ground without any extra line coming out of the spool there. But with this reel, I've noticed that when I set it that way, I get backlash a lot easier compared to when I'm using lighter casting reels and using lighter baits. So what I typically end up doing is just cranking the brakes all the way down, and it casts no problem. I rarely backlash that way, but the one downside is when I'm cranking it down like that, as soon as it hits the water, it's not letting any more line out. So it is swinging back to me essentially and is getting pulled out of the strike zone. So if I'm trying to bomb a cast, and as soon as it's hitting the water with the brakes cranked down this way, it's coming out of the strike zone a little bit. And I mean, that is really only an issue when you're in deeper water where you're really trying to launch baits out there. It hasn't really affected me too negatively, but it is something that I've noticed that I wanted to bring up. It could honestly be user error, but I've played around with it a lot, setting the brakes what is supposed to be, the proper, correct way, where you're just barely having enough tension so that bait hits the ground and isn't letting extra line out. But when I do that, I have issues and I backlash more than usual. So I just crank the brakes down. Unless I'm vertical jigging, then I'll unscrew it and, well, if I can right now, I'll unscrew that and let it open up so that way that bait drops straight down. But if I'm casting and I'm trying to bomb cast, I will run into issues with that and backlash. As for how it performs and holds up, I haven't had it that long, but I have used it a lot in saltwater. And so far, so good. I mean, I take pretty good care of it, and I will, wash it off after every use or every few uses if I'm going on a longer trip. And I don't do anything crazy. I won't spray it. I'm not trying to spray salt inside of the reel. I wouldn't recommend ever spraying your reels off, especially if you're using a lot of pressure. What I do is I will just basically get a wet rag and wipe everything that I can off of the exterior and get all of that extra salt that's dried up, just so it prevents getting in there eventually. But I think this reel is very well sealed, and I have had zero issues with any salt intrusion, corrosion, or anything like that, which I've been very happy about because I've had lots of issues with that in the past with other reels, with after using it one time in salt, getting enough salt spray on it, and then it just completely corroding the reel all out, and then pretty much being unusable, and I have to either get repaired or send back to the manufacturer. So definitely a thumbs up with this reel, at least so far, with no salt intrusion. Getting into the specs of the reel, this one that I have is a 7.6 to 1. I don't know if you guys can read that there, but 7.6 to 1 gear ratio, which is the faster of the two I think they make. Like I said, has a power handle. I don't know if you can choose the option of not coming with the power handle and doing your normal twin handle, but I mean, I feel like with a reel of this size and typically targeting larger fish, you want that leverage anyway. So power handle has been a big plus for me. 18 pounds of drag, a ton of drag on this reel that is able to torque fish in with. And the weight of it, it is 12 ounces, and that is pretty light for a reel this size, I would think. I mean, it is, you know, heavier than a 200 series reel, but as for other reels on the market that are in this size class that are reputable, it's pretty much average. And you know, it will be heavy if you're using it all day, jigging with it all day, casting with it all day. But I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. It's a big reel, but it's not too heavy. I've really never experienced fatigue or major fatigue using this for most of the day. And just like most other Shimano high-end reels, it has their Hagane technology and is really made for a lot of wear and tear, a lot of metal in the body, but like I said, not too heavy. It's got the star drag, so it makes it very easy to tighten or loosen, whether you're doing it in the middle of the fight or just setting it, you know, before you even start fishing. And the line capacity is 65-pound braid, is 170 yards of line. So with the 400, you get a ton of line on this thing. And that helps just with castability, and if you ever run into a giant fish, lessening your chances of getting spooled. And that is the biggest difference between the 3 and the 400 series. I think pretty much all the specs are the same, except the 400 is a little heavier and you get a bigger spool in it. I don't know the specs of the 300, but I know you don't get the same amount of line, but I think the drag and everything else is the same. And this has, like a lot of other Shimano products, their cross carbon drag, haven't had any issues with the drag whatsoever. So coming to the price, and this is kind of the tough part with it because it is a high-end reel, or higher-end reel, you know, a little bit of an investment, and you're trying to get a lot of use out of it. So it does come in at $320 for the 400 or 401, and I think it's $300 even, or $299 for the 300 or 301. So definitely a little bit pricey. And you know, if you're watching this video, you're doing the same thing I did, which is just researching what I was getting into. And if you think this is the reel for you, then I think it's 100% worth it. I mean, I've been looking at this reel for a while before I bought it and have been very satisfied with it since I got it. So that pretty much wraps it up. Short video this week. I've got a lot of cool stuff coming out in the following weeks. I just went on my 5-state snakehead challenge, touring all 5 of the main states that snakehead, northern snakehead, reside in here in the Mid-Atlantic region. So that will be a 2-part series. Super excited for that to drop next week or this coming week. So keep an eye out for part 1 coming out. And if you found this video helpful, make sure to subscribe and like it. And I will see you next time.